Hi, my name is Steve Schultz. I'm a teacher at Lacombe Composite High School, and I run an innovative environmental club called EcoVision. EcoVision was born 17 years ago when a student challenged me with some words I said in class, that words without actions are meaningless. She came to me with an idea of removing our school from the grid by putting solar panels onto the roof. After 4 years of fundraising and project development, we were able to put a 6 kilowatt solar system onto the roof of our school. Became the second school in Alberta to do so. After that, we've built numerous other projects, such as the greenhouse we're standing in right now. It's a geodesic, near net zero tropical greenhouse. Runs on 4 different renewable energy systems, which we can explain later. We then developed an aquaponics system where we raise tilapia fish commercially. Outside the greenhouse, we developed a 2-acre garden. We call it our living forest, where we have 200 fruit trees, 50 raised beds. Then we decided to take care of the vanishing bees, and brought a beekeeping program to Lacombe Comp and to the city of Lacombe. Our innovative beekeeping program allows students to learn about beekeeping, but more importantly, we also developed some solitary bee hotels for our resident solitary bees. And then we also started an urban beekeeping program where the city of Lacombe can allow citizens to have their own 2 hives. After the beekeeping program, kids got really interested in animals. So we developed a project called Roofs for Kids, and the kids are baby goats. And so we started the first goat keeping program in Western Canada, where my students raise between 4 and 8 baby goats during one of the semesters, and then they learn how to make feta, goat milk, and a whole assortment of different dairy products. After that, we became aware of our plight of our Indigenous children from the unmarked graves in BC, and my students really wanted to do a project that encompassed our Indigenous peoples. So we started investigating and discovered that over 25 Indigenous herbs had completely been removed from this property that used to grow here naturally. So we brought in an Indigenous elder, and he taught us about these 25 Indigenous herbs that have medicinal and edible value, and also pollinator value for our pollinators. After those interviews, we reached out to our community and got Cynthia from Living Lands to come and help us develop an ecological Indigenous flower garden, which we put on the roof of our goat barn and also in front of our goat barn. On March 21st, we had an Indigenous naming ceremony where we brought Indigenous culture back to our school and planted those 25 Indigenous plants that are going through their first winter as I speak today.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm in grade 10 and I've been a part of EcoVision since September of 2022.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I've been part of EcoVision since September 26th of 2018, and I'm passionate about helping others.
Hi, I'm James Bella. I'm in grade 11. I've been part of EcoVision since September 2020.
Hey, I'm Elliot. I'm in grade 10 and I've been part of EcoVision since October.
Hi, I'm Kira. I'm in grade 10 and I've been part of EcoVision since September of this year.
Hi, my name is Janet and I'm a FOB member, friend of the Greenhouse and Goats, and I've been volunteering here for about 5 years.
My name is Haven Tees, and I'm also a volunteer, and I've been involved with the EcoVision and the Friends of Garden and Goats since last February, so just about a year.
Hello, my name's Alexander. I'm a grade 10 student at LCHS, and I've been a member of EcoVision since November 2020.
Our latest project is raising awareness about how climate change has affected food insecurity. It's come to our understanding that approximately 17% of our students at Lacombe Comp suffer from some sort of food insecurity, with 4% of them, between 4 and 6% of them actually having severe food insecurity, where they don't have a single lunch every day. So to deal with that, we started growing our own lettuce and vegetables for our foods programs. And in exchange, we're going to start handing out healthy snacks between Block 1 and Block 2, starting February 1st, hopefully. As we raise more money, we'll be able to provide more and more snacks and more often.
So we have fish in here, and fish poop out ammonia, which comes in here and turns it into nitrates, and then that goes into here, feeding these plants, and then goes back up in here and feeds the rest of it to
I think the year was 2019. They discovered unmarked graves in Revelstoke, BC. And my students just got a hold of that story, and it was gut-wrenching and heartbreaking to, hear mothers and grandmothers talk about, their children never came home from school, and they never were told why, and they never had the privilege or opportunity to have a sincere farewell or closure on their missing children. And so our students took that story and put it into action. And so we went and talked to our Indigenous elder, Elder Bert Bull, and he told some other heart-wrenching stories that he had personally encountered through residential school, and we were hooked. The students were hooked, both emotionally but also passionately. They wanted to do something to give back and to put our school onto the path of reconciliation. So we invited him back and told him that we wanted it to have a plant-based, something to do with plants. And so he had told us a story about how it was harder and harder and harder to harvest their sacred herbs, like sweetgrass and sage, just to name two. And so my students said, why don't we build an Indigenous garden for you, where this will be your sacred land. This is a place where you can come and harvest at any time that you want, and that you'll know that we'll take care of it for you on your behalf. And he said that would be a fantastic idea. So we asked him to go back to his community and just to find out information about each of the herbs or plants that we're going to plant. And then we got Cynthia Pohl from Living Lands to do some additional research for us and find out what plants could be companion plants, what sort of soil they needed, what sort of climate, like sunshine and water, and got her to design a rooftop garden at first, because she showed us Barry Architect's rooftop garden, and we were so impressed. There's a little creek running through and a canoe and all these beautiful flowers. But what really impressed my students was the pollinators that were constantly there. And then in the middle of Red Deer, you can have birds and butterflies flying around. So she developed a plan for us.
There's a close-up on the median. Oh, here, this is nice. So this is from the green roof looking down at that new classroom space. You can see the plants. There are a few plants planted here. They're just. This was September 2021. We were planting the stiff goldenrod, and as soon as we had these plants in, immediately there were native pollinators using them. And I'll show you a picture of that. That was like so rewarding. So here's a shot. There's quite a few shots of it, but here we have one of our little solitary indigenous bees.
So after the success, absolute huge success of the rooftop garden, we had students every lunch hour up there enjoying the flowers and the butterflies and the bees.
So this was the design. This was our first little sketch of what we were gonna do. When we decided that, okay, yeah, the goat barn's great, the paddock's great, but it needs to be connected more to the space itself. So that's when we came up with this design. So you can see that we actually didn't do the limestone path here because we made this area a little bigger, but there's a flat area, a gathering area where they can put seating, picnic table or stumps, and so this can be like your educational area, and then these areas are all planted to the same plants that we have on the barn, and then it's edged with this rain garden, which they have a collection tank here for any of the rainwater that isn't absorbed by the living roof itself, goes into the water tank here. Once that tank is full, it overflows into this rain garden.
Put in a little bridge, and we have a little rain garden. So those are all little things that the students added to the design. Cynthia's so great at working with students and educating them on the benefits of these gardens, but also how to maintain them. What I was most impressed with, though, was that the design is really low maintenance. Students are engaged in the garden for 3 months in the fall and a couple months in the spring, and so to have a garden that's low maintenance and also takes work off my shoulders so I can reinvest into my students. So last summer we got together with my students and community volunteers, and we planted those 25 indigenous plants that have medicinal and pollinator and edible properties. And then in September, my students got a chance to see them flower and watch the birds and bees and butterflies come, and we got a chance to use the learning circle. We actually would bring our goats out and not to eat or consume the flowers, but to gather at the learning circle to do health checkups and clip their hooves. So that was really exciting that we could access it right away. We have logs that the students can sit on, and the teacher or the instructor or the workshop advisor just sits in front of the students and gives the workshop.
The garden the students came up with a really nice name, a really creative name for the garden. They call it the EPIC Garden, the Educational Indigenous Pollinator Carbon Capture Garden. So that was a great name. But once they started working with the Massachusetts and the elders, during the formal opening of the garden, they offered to give it a Cree name, and it translates into Little Mother Earth Garden. So that was very nice. And during that formal opening, it wasn't last year, it was in 2021, they had a whole day of Indigenous engagement at the school. So the whole school was a part of this day of celebration. So they had about 8 workshops going on at one time that the students would filter through. So we were there doing a workshop on green roofs, biodiverse green roofs. But there was bead working, there was dancing, there was guidance from elders, there was drumming, and the drumming, I believe it was the drumming could only be attended by males. And then at the end, we had a meal, a buffalo burger, and I can't remember what else, but we had a meal all together, the whole school. And after the meal, it was early spring. There's still a little bit of snow on the ground, but it was a nice day. We all went out to the garden, and that's when they did the unveiling of the new name for the garden. And then after that, they had a round dance in the gymnasium.
Shortly after we built our garden outside, 200 fruit trees and 50 raised beds. One of my students came to me and said, "Oh, Mr. Schultz, have you heard of colony collapse? The bees are dying all over the world." And so again, we did some research and we contacted a bee farmer in Montana. He had lost overnight 2,000 hives. And my students were just like shocked and said, "We have to do something." So I said, "Okay, remember it has to be environmental, it has to be collaborate with the community, it has to enhance your education." So I had nowhere to turn, so lo and behold, we found Cynthia. We went to a conference and Cynthia was one of the keynote speakers. So one of my students went up to Cynthia and said, "Cynthia, we really want to take care of the bees." And so Cynthia challenged my students. I'm really glad that she did this. She said, "What about our local native bees? Have you ever considered their plight? They're endangered. The honeybees aren't endangered. Yes, they're dying and they're collapsing. But what about our native bees that are endangered or threatened?" And so my students said, "Yeah, you're right. So what do we need to do?" Well, she said, "Well, first of all, you need to build pollinator gardens." So Cynthia came and helped us design 6 pollinator gardens that we integrated throughout our edible forest. And she said the fruit trees will supplement these 6 gardens. And 6 gardens are really unique in the sense that they each have flowers that bloom at different times of the year, so that the bees will always have a source of nectar and pollen. And then she taught my students how to build a bee hotel.
I was a beekeeper at one time, but now I'm more into working with indigenous bees. Like,
So
it's not like I
habitat rather than
yeah, it's not like I have anything against bees, but I do. It does concern me that there's a lack of understanding as to how many indigenous bees we have and how their habitat is what's affecting their habitat and how it's dwindling and what needs to be done to build it. And in areas where there's limited resources, so limited food resources or nesting resources, which is quite frequent in both the rural and urban settings. So when there is that limited resources, when you bring honeybees in, there is competition for resources. So it does concern me that there seems to be a lot of focus on honeybees, and when people are trying to do something to help pollinators, often they jump to, "Oh, let's get honeybees." Honeybees aren't native. They don't really, they're good pollinators, but they don't really need they do actually, in order to survive year after year, they do need human engagement. But the more important pollinator that we have in our ecosystem are the indigenous pollinators, and there's over 300 different types, and that's bees alone. That's not even including all the butterflies, the beetles, the hummingbirds. So there's just so many of our native pollinators which don't require any input, any extra help from us in order to do the work that they do for us pollinating. But what they do require from us is to make sure that we don't destroy their habitat and make sure that we understand what they require for a healthy habitat and then start to protect it and build it.
When I first launched the beekeeping program, I needed to test it. I needed a pilot group of students because the school division said, "Oh, students aren't going to want to take beekeeping." And so I offered it after school because they weren't going to let me put it into the timetable. So quickly had 5 students sign up. But the one particular student, I'm going to call her Sally, she came to my class in grade 10, one of my agriculture classes actually, and she was so nervous. And so nervous that she actually peed her pants before she walked into the classroom. So I noticed her right away, and I went out to her and I said, "I've got a special role for you. You're going to be a significant person in this school." She looks at me, tears running down her eyes because she's now embarrassed, right? She says, what do you want me to do?" I said, I need beekeepers. I want you to be a beekeeper. We're starting a new beekeeping program. You're going to have to come after school. So she, that first day, she goes home, tells her mom, you know, and her mom calls me up and says, like, is this true? Are you offering a beekeeping class? And I said, yeah. She said, I have to tell you something. My daughter hasn't been to school for 3 years. She has extreme high anxiety. We forced her to go to school today, just hoping and praying that she would find a connection and want to come back to school. Now she really wants to come to school. And I don't know what you're doing, but just keep it up. And so her mom, they lived in Black Falls, so her mom drove her daughter to every beekeeping class after school. And we actually named our first hive after one of her initials. It was named after our first hive. And she graduated with honors and became my first one of my first 5 beekeepers to finish the program. And when I showed the admin the results, they said, okay, you can put it into the timetable, but if it wasn't for those brave students like Sally and her mom, and that they believed in the program to the point that they would sacrifice after school, and yeah, it made all the difference. And so now currently we have a waiting list for all 3 of my programs of about 100 students, and my beekeeping class last semester was 33 students that were involved in the beekeeping program. So now I have too many students wanting to get into my programs, which is, I guess, a good problem to have.
So the way I heard about EcoVision is I joined the agriculture club for the school, which really pushed out reasons why agriculture is super important for our environment, how the ecosystem in our world is being affected by many different gases and that, like carbon dioxide and methane. So because of that, I decided that to gain more skills in my life while also helping people in need, that I joined EcoVision. Joining EcoVision doesn't only help you, but it helps everyone around you. Meaning, if you join it, you're going to gain many skills, and all the students in it are going to gain many skills, including public speaking, business ownership kind of things with the market. And because of that, they're going to create skills and hone their skills to the maximum for when they actually graduate school. And even after all that, they're still helping the people in need by these kind of programs like food insecurity, ALE, decarbonization, helping the environment in general.
This one is maybe it's less emotional, but way more impactful. So one of Tiana's friends, his name is Charles, and he was the first person she asked to be part of the solar project. So Charles was an exceptional individual that if we hadn't started EcoVision, he would have probably just taken all the academic classes and then graduated, because he wasn't really an athlete. He did canoeing or rowing passionately, but wasn't into the school sports. So when he got involved in our solar project, it just turned on a leadership and because some leaders can be learned, or leadership can be learned, but there are also leaders that are born leaders, right? Charles was one of those guys. So Charles helped us complete the solar project, but what happened after that is what I want to talk about. He went to U of A, got into the engineering program, and he was living in the dorm, and he approached the university and said, "You guys are wasting money, and you're wasting students' money." And so the university said, like, "We really want to save money, so tell us what you mean." He said, "Well, students have to go downstairs and wash their clothes and dry their clothes. It's the drying of the clothes that is wasting their money and wasting your money." Because the dorm he was living on had all south-facing windows. He said, if you install a drying rack into every one of your bedrooms, students, and then lower the cost, for using the dryer as an incentive, or increase the price of using the dryer as an incentive to get kids to put their clothes onto these drying racks. And it was a complete success. And then he said, I have another way you can save money and also reduce rent. He said, students are plugging in their VCRs at that time and their televisions and their cell phone chargers, and it's called phantom power. And he calculated that 7% of the electrical bill was being used by phantom power. So he challenged the university, said, if you buy a phantom bar, permanently install it in every one of the dorms, you can lower rent by 7% and students will use it. And again, completely successful. Didn't stop there. He then approached his faculty and said, I think we should launch a satellite into space to monitor solar winds and to monitor environmental conditions. And the profs looked at him and said, you're crazy. Where are you getting all these crazy ideas from? He then referred back to our EcoVision Club and how he had been inspired to be a leader, to think outside the box, to think about projects that had never been done. And so 5 years ago, that would have been 2017, the U of A became the first university in Canada to launch a satellite into space, monitoring solar winds. And why do I bring his story up? He's still involved in that project. He started his own satellite company monitoring soil conditions and monitoring fertilizer and monitoring air so that farmers can reduce their insurance costs because they have data they can present to the insurance companies. But the other reason I'm bringing this up is they're going to be launching their second satellite in March this year. And this satellite is going to be monitoring forest fires, because the problem that arose was Fort McMurray, and almost the whole city got burned, and millions of people were affected, or at least thousands. And so, the data suggests that if that fire had been able to be detected in its infancy, that whole tragedy could have been prevented.
One of the big things that Mr. Schultz set out from the get-go is that words are important, but words without action are far less impactful and meaningful. And so it's important to always focus on having some kind of action component to what you're planning to do. And so from there we got the idea that, okay, well, let's implement some programs at the high school. Like, let's do some stuff, change some things at the high school. And that involved learning how to do research and learning how to talk with other teachers, the administration, the community, and just a lot of those kind of leadership activities that you don't often get to learn. I've had a great number of mentors, but Steve really goes above and beyond for his students and for the people in his life to make sure they get the most that they possibly can. And so it's no wonder he recently won one of the Prime Minister's Teaching Awards, right? Like, he was, I think it was 2019, he got to come to Ottawa and meet the Prime Minister, and he was one of, I think 10 teachers across the country that received this, really, it's the highest award you can get as a teacher, right? Like, it's not an accident. Like, Steve is just incredible, and really changed so many people's lives. EcoVision even is, just the tip of the iceberg for the accomplishments Steve has made, and I think it's really hard for anybody to wrap their head around that, because when they see, if they've seen what EcoVision is, like, that's by itself in the past 15 years is more, it could easily be several people's lifetime's work. And Steve has done that, and that's just a piece of his lifetime's work.